Anything in particular you guys are interested in?
I'll save tomato seeds.
Okay, well,
Yeah, and like, yeah, what's the, yeah, well, tomatoes are good, but just save on the seed bill.
okay.
That's a good thing.
So yeah,
The other thing is to get some varieties that you can't buy.
well, if you're looking for rare varieties, you can get them from some rare variety companies like Baker Creek down in the States. They have some really nice rare varieties. And then of course by coming here you'd probably get some more unusual varieties as well. But there's two basic types of pollination. One is the plant is either an inbreeder or it's an outcrosser. So if it's an inbreeder, that is the easiest type of seed. And what you've got there is you've got your tomatoes and your peppers, your beans, your peas, lupins, snapdragons.
Self-pollination?
Self-pollinated, yep, self-pollinated. If you're trying to do something which outcrosses, you've got a lot more things that you have to consider. You know, is it by wind? Is it by bee? What kind of bee? Or is another kind of pollinator? So, for instance, carrot seed, the blue bottle fly is the best pollinator for a carrot seed. Okay, so there's some little hover flies and things that pollinate them as well. Then you have to think about, am I going to do it outside? Am I going to do it in a greenhouse? If I do it outside, I'm going to have all these issues with pollinating things from weeds and other people's gardens. If I'm going to do it in a greenhouse, will the greenhouse get too hot and therefore they won't pollinate properly? So, you know, like there's lots of things to be considered. But when you come to the tomatoes, it's really easy. You only, I don't have the actual isolation distance with me, but you only need something like 10 feet between tomato plants. Yeah. And one of the easiest ways, if you've got a very small garden and you're growing your tomatoes for food and you're putting them 18 inches apart, one of the best ways to do your tomatoes is to look at your plants and say, this beefsteak tomato plant is a wonderful, healthy, thriving plant. And I think I'm going to really want to save tomatoes from this particular plant. And so what you do is you go to the dollar store and you buy bridal gift bags. And when you have your hand of tomato flowers, you see, oh, that's a nice sturdy hand of flowers. I really like that. And you take your bag before any tomato forms and you slip it on and just tie it up. The air goes through. It doesn't get overly hot, doesn't get overly cold. And then you just go along every so often and shake your bag. If you've got a lot of tomatoes that you're doing, I mean, you know, a whole greenhouse full of tomatoes that you're doing, you can go along and put a brush on an electric drill or something and go along and do it. But you just, what you're trying to do is you're trying to do the same action that a bumblebee would do. And they help pollinate tomatoes, but they don't actually pollinate them. They just sit on them and vibrate them. And the vibration causes the self-pollination to complete. So when your hand of tomatoes that you really like starts to form tomatoes, you might want to clip a few seeds, a few flowers off of the bottom, or you might want to wait until there's tomatoes on the whole hand. And then you either take the bag right off and put a piece of tape or something on that hand so that you know which hand you've kind of looked after. Or you can just take a knife and cut around the bottom of the bag and just let it let it all happen. And those tomatoes you have then pollinated in isolation. And there's no chance they've crossed with any other tomatoes in your greenhouse, in your bed, whatever.
So you leave that bag on? Like, that's the flowers are coming out, budding out. You
You-
wait till they bud out?
You wait until the tomatoes start forming,
Okay.
and then you take the bag off. If there's still some flowers on that hand that haven't formed tomatoes, you should snip those off.
Oh, okay.
Those bridal bags are those like the little mash bags or something like that.
Yeah. They're about as big as this. Yeah. Or you can formulate something else, but you know, like that's
Is that just with plastic bags or whatever?
no plastic bags. They have to airflow. But if you've got a little bit of old Protect Net or something, you can use that.
I always thought they were plastic bags, eh?
No, they're a mesh bag.
Put your jelly beans or whatever.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Nobody invites her.
The other way of doing it is like if you have a lot more room, and for instance you've got 10 of this tomato and 10 of this tomato and 25 of this tomato, and you want to save a large volume of seeds, you can buy a product called Protect Net. Do you guys know Protect Net?
Well, maybe I've seen it.
Protect Net is in the William Dam catalog. I think it's the only catalog you can get it in. And what you do with Protect Net is it doesn't keep any heat in, but what it does is it keeps the bugs out. And so, for instance, you can either take your whole roll of Protect Net and put it down on the edges, and then go over the top of your Roma tomatoes and down right to the ground. Put some soil or something so that it makes a little cloche over the top of that variety, a little cloche over the top of the next variety, a little cloche over the top of the next variety. And then you've got 3 varieties, all fairly close to each other, but they're all grown now in isolation. And because they're self-pollinated, there's no problem. You don't have to open them up for insects or anything like that. Some of the commercial growers, what they do is they'll put in a 300-foot bed of, I don't know, orange bell peppers.
Yeah.
And they'll cover it with Protect Net. And then they'll put in a 300-foot bed of red bell peppers and leave it open. And then the next one is yellow bell peppers, and they'll cover it.
Why do they leave the one open?
Because because it's cheaper. And you don't have to cover it if it, like you only,
Pollination. Is it-
the pollination distances are so close. I think it's 30 feet or something. So for peppers, it's 30 feet for peppers in the same genre. So if you're doing hot peppers, it's 30 feet to the next hot pepper. If you're doing sweet peppers, it's 30 feet to the next sweet pepper, because it doesn't really matter that much if 1 or 2 seeds here and there do get cross-pollinated. But if you're growing hot peppers and sweet peppers, the isolation is about 300 feet, because the hot pepper gene is dominant.
Can you
And
go a long ways?
And you don't want people to buy a sweet pepper. It's okay to buy a 4-lobed red bell pepper and find it's only got 3 lobes on it, or the occasional one is orange or something like that. That's okay, because your customer still gets a sweet pepper. But if you're doing a hot pepper and a sweet pepper, you don't want them to buy like a sweet pepper and find out they're scalding hot and they can't use them. So that's, yeah.
Keep Carolina Reaper away from my peppers.
Yeah. I heard of that though. I think it was this guy at it's just from here, Wildflight.
Oh, yeah, Herman.
Wildflight, but I think he gets it from Germany or something in rolls, but it's for insecticide control. I've never heard of him
That's
using
right.
it for pollination.
Yeah.
And he was offering to, you can buy it off him if you, I can't remember what we were talking about,
It-
some kind of bug that
You know, like
was
as
resistant.
a large farm, you can buy ProtectNet from Dubois in Quebec. But the freight would be exorbitant for a backyard gardener to try and buy
Yeah,
a
that's
roll
what
from
he says it's
Dubois.
got, you know,
So
Would remake cloth work?
no, because remake
Permeable.
no, it holds heat
Ah,
and seed. You'd have to go to someone like good old John Navazio here to get the exact problems with it. But when the flower gets too hot, there's little channels in it that the pollen falls down, and they will dry out or they will cook, and therefore the seed won't be viable, or you won't get as much seed.
kind of stunts it or whatever.
Yeah. I'm not really a biologist. I'm just a hands-on seed grower, so it gets a little difficult for me to describe it sometimes. But yeah, so you have to really be careful that you don't heat up your seed-producing crop too much. Yeah. And then when you get peppers are a fantastic crop because not only do you get the seed out of them, but the whole thing is still edible. You can dry it, you can freeze it, you can eat it. Fine, because what you want is you want a beautiful, ripe fruit. So that's something else to take into consideration. If you've only got a small garden and you're also trying to grow your own food, what kind of crops can you still eat?
Just the one that we got out of last year was like carrots.
No, you can't eat your carrots.
Well, yeah, you eat the carrot and then save the little green top and throw it in the ground.
You can do that,
And
but
then the next year you got
you can do that, yeah. But you can't. You only get a small. Like if you've got a carrot like this, you can cut it at about 3 inches, and put it in, because no, you need to put about 3 inches in so that you have the food in the root to give you a really good crop of seed. So that's what you need there. Beets I wouldn't even try and cut. They just would not grow probably.
Okay, you do the beets the same way, wait
Yep.
for another year.
Yep.
Okay, because we got a lot, like we just did it last year. We got a lot of seeds, but we haven't planted them yet.
Yeah. So you've got seeds, you haven't planted them yet, you haven't tried them, you're unsure about them. Get yourself a little piece of paper towel and do a germ test.
That's right. Can you, I was going to ask, can you do that with, we've already started some, that, just to start them in the paper towel and put them in?
If you start root crops like parsnip and carrot in a paper towel and then put them into the garden to grow, you'll find that you get very poorly shaped roots.
Otherwise,
Because when you put them in, you're going to put them in and they're going to be a little bit sideways or a little bit this or a little bit that. And it really doesn't work with those roots that you would like to see nice and tapered, that are easy to peel and easy to see if they're going to be stored, that type of thing. You're better to actually start those right in the ground. I have started beets in little cell packs, and you'll find that you do get a squirrely root on them, but it doesn't affect the shape of the beet. It just affects the visual if you take them to the farmer's market to sell. So, but the beet itself is as good as putting in the ground, and you get a little bit of extra day length on it. Yeah.
just the veggies, then the rest are like corn and stuff, or there are beans, or
A lot of crops that you grow, you can start in the greenhouse or early, including peas, beans. Some people even do spinach and radishes, beets. I do turnips that way. Some of the crops that need to be that are really tiny, that need to be weeded if your garden is particularly weedy. You know, things like turnips, it's easier to start them in a cell pack and then to thin them down and put the plugs in the ground.
What's a cell pack?
A plastic tray,
Yeah, plastic.
like and you get kind of 72 cells or 128 cells,
Oh,
or
okay, yeah.
so it's
Yeah, that's what it's sort of.
yeah, that's what I would call a cell pack. But you know, like when you're coming to saving the seeds from your carrots, you always want to save the seeds from your best carrots and your best beets. Goes for anything. You know, if when you've looked after your hand of tomatoes, if that hand of tomatoes is all cracked and gnarly and don't, you know, you can save it in an emergency so that you maintain the variety to give it a trial again next year. But if it's all cracked and gnarly, and it shouldn't be, you really don't want to sell that seed just in case it's a trait that you have, you know, kind of developed.
It's the black one in the family.
But it could just be, as good old John Navazio says, it could just be that you planted it on a daub of dinosaur poop, and it just went poof, and everything cracked and went gnarly. You have no idea. So you have no idea why some of your problems happen. But if a problem happens, it's not a good idea to pass that seed on to somebody else. But, you know, grow it out again, check it again, and see if it's gonna grow.
Your greenhouse could boil year round.
No, heaven forbid, I need some time off.
I have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
Do you save seed to sell?
Yes.
And in terms of the corporate threat to our food systems, what seeds do you feel like it's most important for backyard and community gardeners to save and share around and stuff like that?
I think one of the indicators is the seed catalogs. And 10 years ago, you couldn't buy a hybrid radish seed. Now you can hardly buy an open pollinated radish seed.
Right.
The same with onions, the same with cabbage. You know, all the seeds, even with lettuce, they're going into hybrid seeds. So you have to be a little bit careful, because some of the open pollinated seeds, for instance, that you buy from a catalog, will be labeled as PVP, which is plant variety protected,
It's like blue
Which
hubbard
means
now.
it's been patented by a corporation.
which has been patented, or by a backyard gardener.
Oh,
It's not necessarily a corporation, but PVP means that when that seed is sold, a certain percentage of it goes back to the grower. And if I developed a seed and was growing it, then on the anticipation that I'd get 25 cents a package or whatever back, then I would appreciate other people not growing it and selling it under the same name.
aha. So you might not mind so much if they grew it, but to sell it under the same name, you wouldn't want them to do that.
I wouldn't want them to sell it under the same name.
To profit from your work.
Yeah,
Like that's,
exactly.
I'm taking that, you have to have developed that variety to have that, the
Yeah.
PVP on it.
Yeah, it's like unfortunately the mice got into a lot of my seeds this year, but I did work on a hybrid pepper seed for 8 years
Wow.
It makes sense.
until I got a particular trait that I really liked on it. And now I have to go back to a 5-year one again, which is too bad. But anyway, if I did sell that commercially and it was PVP, then part of my financing for that 8 years of work and the actual production of the seed would be the monies that I would get back from that. So, you know, you be a little bit careful on what you do. But I think taking any open pollinated seed and bringing it back into production is a great idea.
Blue Hubbards, we used to get them those sizes tape.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Now you can't hardly even get a seed out of it. We don't sprout.
A lot of the blue Hubbards now are hybrids, and they're the baby size.
Yeah.
So again, you know, what you need to do is you need to check the internet. It's the most, it's fantastic.
Big ones. We used to get big ones like this.
Yeah, check the
Never
internet.
saved any of those seeds, but the other seeds don't keep.
Yeah, go to one of the, you know, as I say, Baker Creek, or even TNT Seeds sells some of the giant vegetables, and try and find what you really want. The other thing to do is talk to people at the farmers market. If Joe the farmer is selling massive, great big blue Hubbards, and you see them at the farmers market, ask him if you would be able to save the seed. Because if he's grown them in isolation, then you would be able to save his seed.
Yeah, because that's what I'm looking for, is those big giant Hubbards.
Yeah. They are hard to get,
Oh, yeah.
and a lot of the old varieties are going,
Yeah.
and that's the ones that you know would be good to save.
A lot of the seeds look all the same in all the stores.
Exactly.
I never even saw them. When we first got them at 30, 40, 50 pounds, those were big.
Yeah.
Except for apples.
Hi again.
I'm working with starting a community garden in
Yes.
an urban setting
Yes.
with mostly indigenous population. A lot of them are elders, and they very much want us to be growing traditional indigenous, mostly Shuswap and Okanagan food and medicinal plants. And I'm wondering if you can shed any light on how we would, like my experience, which is very limited, of growing indigenous plants from seed, is that it's very difficult, very, like, way lower germination rates than seeds you would get commercially, right, or even from swapping with other gardeners. Do you have any insights on any of that?
Not a huge amount. There are a number of traditional seeds, and again, searching them on the internet, there are seed savers down on the floor, Doug and Sandra, who are selling wild crafted seeds. I don't know if they have food plants. They certainly have, you know, kind of trees and
Some berries.
yes, but whether or not they have food plants, I don't know that. I think if any of the elders have any seeds that they've saved over the years or any insight, unfortunately, I did get, personally, I got some orca or friendship beans from one of the elders at the Adams Lake. And unfortunately, I've lost that strain, but there are a few around. Mojave Kaplan.
Yeah, I was looking for her and I haven't found her yet.
She's not here today, but her table is just behind mine,
Okay.
and so her seeds are here.
Where on the floor? I got here late. Sorry.
I don't know where on the floor.
Find her. I have to find her.
Find me, find me, and we'll find Mojave's table together. Yeah. But the other thing too is quite often, you know, if you can manage to get the seeds, and you only get a 5% germination, that 5% germination is going to be enough to produce seed the next year. You just can't eat it. So maybe the
So grow it up for seed, and then grow it up for seed, and then keep until you've got enough, and then grow for food.
Exactly, exactly. So if there's some kind of squash that you really would like to grow, and the germination on it, as I say, is only something like 5% that first year. If you grow, okay, we're going to grow this red curry squash over here, which we're going to have for food this year, and we're going to grow the squash that we want to save seed from over here, and then you may have to hand pollinate it, which is not difficult.
Okay, good.
It's not difficult. Something you do at 6 o'clock in the morning. That may be difficult for some of us, but
Just a paintbrush and that's it, or?
it's what you do is you just go out there and you harvest your little boy flower. And we all know what a little boy squash flower looks like, do we?
Go ahead, tell us.
It's usually taller than the girl flowers, and it has no squash at the stem, on the top of the stem. So you get your little boy flower, and you take his skirt off. Boys don't often wear skirts, I guess. Nowadays, lots of boys wear skirts, but you take the skirt off, and then you take your little boy flower, and you go through not the same plant, but a couple of other plants, 2 or 3 other plants, and then you kind of cross and that would help with genetic diversity. If you don't pollinate the same plant, it helps a little bit with your diversity. And then what you can do is mark those ones that you've hand pollinated, and then you can use the rest of the crop for food, but not your hand pollinated ones. And I should go back and say that the first day you go out with paper bags.
With,
Paper bags.
right.
And you put the paper bags over the unopened flowers. And the second or third day,
Boys, or-
boys and girls,
Okay.
boys and girls. And you go out the second or third day and do your cross-pollination. And when you've done your cross-pollination, you put your bags back on your girl flowers because they can still be pollinated, and you don't want them pollinated.
You don't want any
You don't want
competing pollen,
exactly.
right?
So put it back on again, and then a couple of days later you go out, you take the bag off, and the flower will fall off, or you can knock the flower off. Once the flower is off, there's no way it's going to get cross-pollinated. There's 3 common types of winter squash that we grow in this area. There's probably more, but there's 3 in this area. There's your Peppo, your Machada, and your Maxima. If you grow 1 Peppo, 1 Machada, and 1 Maxima, you don't have to bother with this cross-pollination nonsense because they will not cross-pollinate.
Okay, can you say those names again?
Yeah.
Peppo,
P-E-P-O?
P-E-P-O,
Yep.
Maxima,
Yep.
M-A-X-I-M-A, and Machada, M-O-C-H-A-T-A,
M-O-C-H-A-T?
A-T-A, Machada. So your Peppo is your spaghetti squash, your zucchini,
Okay.
your acorn, some of your pumpkins, your delicatas, your sweet dumplings, they're all Peppo. Your Maxima is your giant Hubbards, your Curies, your Cubochas, they are all Maximas. Your Machada is basically butternut.
What's a red curry squash?
I have seeds for them downstairs, just $3.50 a package.
You grow the best red curry squash.
What
I've
is
been eating
that?
it all winter long.
Is it a,
Such a good keeper.
Yeah, it's like a baby blue Hubbard that's orange.
oh, okay.
They're very pretty,
Very, yeah.
and the flesh is very pretty.
And the skin cooks on them, so you
Tell
can.
me the others in that, the Hubbard you said, are in that.
Hubbards are in that one. The green.
Families? No.
No, the family is the Maxima,
Right.
and then the variety is Hubbard, Curie, Cubocha. And you'll find in your better quality catalogs, you will find that under squash, they usually tell you, where are we, what they are. Here we go. They may not in this one. This William Dam is not as good as some of the others. No,
What's
no.
in the Machado family?
Basically butternut.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
Thank you.
The best catalog for that kind of thing used to be high mowing, and I haven't
Oh, yeah.
I haven't looked at it lately to find that out.
I have a friend that may have that catalog because she used to teach there at the school.
Okay, winter squash, cultural information they have down here. Hybrid, 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 hybrid. Nutter butter. No, they don't have that information on the, oh yeah, here we go. Butternut, C. moschata. Acorn, C. pepo. Delicata, C. pepo. Curie, C. maxima.
Okay.
Okay, so the high mowing catalog is great. It's a small company down in the States, and on their website, they will tell you how to save your seeds. Okay. And you do have to watch your family grouping. Some of the brassicas you can grow side by side, and still get a true vegetable, and some you can't.
It's just like broccoli or-
Yeah, yeah. For instance, you could grow broccoli and rutabaga. They're both brassicas, but one's a. I'd have to go back into the catalog. They have a different second name to them for the brassicas. Different family name. Whereas you can't grow chard beets because they will cross-pollinate.
Now, this being an urban garden, like the whole area we're growing in is probably the size of this center.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we calculate how close we can put things together?
There's a very
I've been telling people, pretty much we can't grow anything
would you like one?
in the garden that's going to cross-pollinate, but maybe that's not true.
Okay. This one here, Seed to Seed by Suzanne
Okay.
Ashworth.
Yes, thank you.
And that's an incredibly good, incredibly basic book.
I'm going to keep asking questions until somebody stops me, or you do. If others
Okay.
have questions,
Right.
please jump in.
Something that I want to do is GMO, but you just hear lots of it and I don't understand everything on it, and these animal parts in it, I don't, like, all the different ways that it's done, I don't really understand it. Why are people against it?
My basic understanding of genetically modified is that people have been against it because it's impossible to withdraw from the environment once it has been released. There are health issues with GMO, which are documented but not fully researched. And there's issues of, I guess I would call it corporate greed with GMOs. Farmers get trapped into contracts and can't get out of them. There's issues with super weeds with GMOs. And that one is also super bugs. So the easiest one to talk about is super bugs. If you buy a GMO corn, which is, has Bacillus thuringiensis, BT, right in the corn, if a cornworm eats that corn, they will die. Cornworm is a really devastating problem for some corn growers. However, you also get aphids on your corn, and the aphids do not die as readily with the BT. You also get ladybugs on your corn. The ladybugs eat the aphids that have ingested the BT. Because the ladybugs have this BT in their system, their egg clutch is smaller and they lay less eggs per year. So therefore, your natural pest issue, your predators are now going downhill. However, in this huge area of corn, over in this corner, there's 2 cornworms that don't die from BT. In fact, it's like sauce, you know? They love it. So they procreate, and all of a sudden, the cornworms start coming in from this area and coming back into the corn again. So then the company who sells the genetically modified crop has to either change their genetic modification or increase or change the amount of pesticide that they use to control this issue. The same for the weeds. If you get some weeds, if you get some weeds that are an issue, and what would happen, for instance, is you plant genetically modified corn, and you come in the next year and you want to plant wheat, so you plant wheat. Well, with the genetically modified corn, the glyphosate in the corn is suppressing the root system. So 1, your wheat is not as healthy, and 2, there would be some weeds that were not affected by that glyphosate, and they suddenly surge up. So then your field is basically no good for putting wheat into, or no good for putting canola into. Therefore, you have to monocrop year after year with the same crop. And that's basically just not healthy.
What the corporation wants, right?
Yeah,
Exactly,
so I get
exactly.
farmers hooked on their particular cocktail of herbicides and pesticides and genetically modified seed.
Yeah. So that,
Well, the original motivation for most of this genetic modification, although they say it was to feed the starving people of the world, really the motivation was so that their chemicals, the crops wouldn't grow without their chemicals. So then the farmers have to buy their chemicals as well as buying their seeds. Farmers then have to buy their chemicals because the seeds won't grow without their chemicals, or they won't be harvestable or whatever. And now they're using glyphosate. So, like, that's a really big one that we need to be up in arms about. They're spraying it on all of our forests.
they're spraying it on wheat so that the wheat dries down quicker, and so then they can harvest it earlier. And
I found out on the way here, they're even using glyphosate as a desiccant on spinach.
It's bigger than Roundup, or is it part of Roundup?
It's part of
Roundup is a glyphosate. Yeah. If you want to take the theory of farmer domination a step further, if you control the food source, you control the world.
You control the population.
And you can't save seeds from GMO.
Well, you-
The seeds
You can, but you can get sued.
Yeah, so you
Yeah.
can't see.
So
And one last thing I do want to add is that you can save hybrid seeds.
yeah.
Don't be afraid to save hybrid seeds, because if you get an F1 hybrid is just a 2-cross, an F2 hybrid is a 4-cross. You get 4 genetic bases from that. And so you would get not only the 4 genetic bases, but you would get all the crosses that they can develop as well. And you can actually dehybridize something and get a stable line out of it. And
Back to the original?
not necessarily back to the original, you could do something totally different. And there is a seed grower down in the States, Frank Morton, and that's his whole thing with his salad greens is to grow them all together. Let them all cross. Let them all do these things, and then to gradually select out of those the ones with the nice leaf structure, the ones that taste the best, the ones with the prettiest colors, whatever trait you're looking for. So it's exciting. Seed saving is exciting.
Yes.
And don't be restricted by anything.
Is that the book that's up for sale there? Is there anything in companion planting in that book?
In my
Seed
book,
savers, yeah.
companion planting, I think you would have to go basically to a companion planting, and the basics. The basic companion planting I used to use was carrots love tomatoes.